It's time now for Harm Reduction. Heard every Tuesday at 7 a.m. with Will Beaton. Cutting Edge Radio, where we'll ask the questions others don't want to ask. Now here's your host, Will Beaton.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Harm Reduction Report. This is Willard TeaBelly, and this is our 40th episode. And I am honored to be sitting across the table from returning co-host Mora Wilder. How is ya, Mora?
Isn't great.
Glad to hear it. It's a beautiful morning in Colorado. Just had a bike ride. Saw all the people walking around. The weekend is over, and it seems that everyone's in good spirits. Actually, I read the student newspaper today, and somebody drowned in Horsetooth Reservoir yesterday.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. It didn't have much details. A man was there with his wife, and then he was out swimming, and then just went under and didn't come back, and
whoa,
he called a helicopter and he had died.
Okay.
Sorry to start off with that story, but it was just something that I read this morning at the beginning of my day. Not sure what could have been done for him for harm reduction, but Horsetooth Reservoir is just west of town, a place Mora and I have been. We haven't gone swimming though.
Not yet.
Still think we should. But we had an adventure this weekend that I'm excited to talk about, that I've been trying to gather my thoughts about in regards to harm reduction. We went to the Red Rocks Amphitheatre. What had you known about Red Rocks before we went this weekend?
Honestly, not a ton, other than it's a really, really sweet venue. Apparently has Red Rocks, and it would be a pretty sweet place to watch a concert.
Yeah, and I believe we decided that indeed the rocks were red. Mm-hmm. I was a little concerned.
Some orangish hues here and there, but yes, overall mostly red.
Red enough.
Red enough, yes.
Yeah, they didn't lie about that part. And the amphitheater is beautiful. It's up in the hills, you know, like Denver.
You're overlooking Denver. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. That was really cool to see Denver out in the distance, to see the downtown and the big buildings. And I've not spent too much time in Denver, but just when the sun was hitting the buildings and it was like glowing and we could see it out in the distance, that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. And more interesting to me that as the darkness fell over the city, it was falling over the concert too, and perhaps everybody, both at the party and in the city, are going into the same night. And I wonder if the harm was increasing for individuals and people wherever they were, because night brings excitement.
Not necessarily harm, but
sometimes. Yes. I wonder, you think more harm is happening in the middle of the night?
Perhaps, yeah. Or more potential for harm, I guess.
Yeah, when we talk about drugs and alcohol abuse and stuff like that, we usually assume that stuff is happening at night. But perhaps we all ought to bring more attention to the stuff that goes on during the day. Addictions people are having that are normal and going on in front of everyone all the time. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's lots more harm in the day than we are aware of.
Perhaps, yes.
I think a lot of the harm reduction services we've talked about on the show, like Dance Safe, Dance Safe describes themselves as for the nightlife community. It's in the word, nightlife. And it's like the stuff's going on at night. But also there's other stuff happening. Maybe half the people I saw today walking to class have things going on that are not visible, but maybe are visible. I mean, more than half the people I just encountered on campus had coffee with them, including me.
Yeah.
Is that doesn't necessarily mean you're addicted to anything or that it's a harmful thing happening, but
it's a funny thought.
Yeah. Maybe it goes unquestioned more often.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. But out at Red Rocks, it was pretty obvious. We went in expecting there to be, it's a nightlife event. It was a electronic music show. How would you describe that genre exactly?
Yeah, electronic music. It was quote-unquote trap fest.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily call that trap music. I would say it's, like electronic dance music. Kind of. Yeah.
Right. And with parties like that, people could be using illegal substances
legal and illegal
recreation. Yes,
substances.
right.
Yeah.
In Colorado, in an outdoor amphitheater, marijuana was present, clearly present, and that definitely seemed, from my perspective, to be like the least harmful thing going on. I didn't see a lot of people drinking. Did you?
Well, we didn't see them drinking, but I wouldn't be surprised if many people had been drinking. I know that at concert venues, the alcohol is usually pretty expensive, so I wouldn't be surprised if people had drank before, and come to the concert, maybe not consumed there.
Definitely. Now I do remember the people in the parking lot. We saw people drinking in the parking lot after they arrived, before they walked in. Yeah. Did we see, I believe it was $11 beers at the venue.
Jeez.
So I wonder, why do they do that? Probably people are more willing to pay more for booze at a concert or someplace, right? A place where they're expected to be drinking and you can't bring in your own. They can just charge you more.
It's because there's a limited supply. Like, if you want a beer, you have to get it here because you can't bring it in. And so if you really would like one, I guess you'll pay $11.
Or what's more dangerous probably is the people who drink all they can before they go in.
Yeah.
And the group of people I met, I was talking to, that's what they were doing.
I'm sure that's not uncommon at all.
Right. Lots of people binge drinking a lot, before they walk right in 5 minutes before they go into the concert. Because the beers are so expensive.
Yeah.
If the beers were more sensibly priced, maybe they wouldn't have to binge drink all their alcohol in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd be fine supporting the establishment and local breweries and paying for the stuff inside.
And kind of drinking at a pace that is more recommended and potentially less harmful.
Yes.
Yeah.
More recommended is just not all at once.
Yeah.
Because that was a long show.
If you don't have a lot of money, you're not gonna do that. To pay $11 for a beer.
So that's interesting. It reminds me of the conversations back home, taxing cigarettes and alcohol and stuff. For example, in Minnesota, the tax on tobacco is much higher than it is in North Dakota. At least it was a few years ago. And so it's very expensive to buy a carton of cigarettes in Minnesota for a lot of people. And this is a really fun debate that I still don't know. I'd like to look at more empirical research about. Does taxing stuff like that actually decrease use?
Yeah, I was wondering. There's got to be statistics out there about smokers in both of those states. We should look into that.
We totally should. And it's a debate I've thought about for a while, and I think it's a good thing. I think the tax on tobacco in Minnesota, for example, I think it's a good harm reduction strategy. But we definitely need, the data to support it. We need to study it and make sure that the impact is what people wanted it to be. How could that get abused, do you think? Well, I don't know. People who can afford cigarettes are just going to buy them and happily pay the tax and get them. The people who don't have a lot of money are now just in a harder position. Maybe they will. I
will say, though, the bummer is that I have friends who are smokers or trying to quit, and Nicorette gum is really expensive. So, maybe taxing certain tobacco products. I don't know if that's not necessarily a tobacco product, but if that was cheaper, while the maybe subsidized, or just Nicorette gum was more available, while the cigarettes and other tobacco products were a higher price, I think that would make more sense from a harm reduction standpoint, because it gives someone an outlet, to, if they can't afford cigarettes or they want to stop smoking, they can have an alternative to help them quit.
Right. The people who are currently addicted to cigarettes. And I guess those are the two main people we think about, right? The people who are currently addicted to cigarettes and the people who might start become addicted, maybe kids especially. If Nicorette gum is more expensive than cigarettes, that's not a good sign. Yeah, that's a funny question. I would hope actually that in the plan they said something about we'll increase the price of cigarettes and because of that be able to subsidize the price of alternatives. That would be a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But on that note, I didn't see really anybody using tobacco at Red Rocks.
Well, I guess they did have quote designated smoking areas, and I didn't really go by there. Did you happen to?
I didn't see a smoking area, so
okay.
Probably. I don't know, but yeah, there was a lot of people there,
and there were people smoking weed in the audience.
There were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as it got darker, it was hard to see what people were doing. And as the lasers increased in intensity. The one obvious thing that we were excited to evaluate is the water situation. Okay, you've got 9,000 people in this big outdoor amphitheater at a show that goes from 4:30 to 11, where it's expected and known that a lot of people will be drinking, others will be using other substances. Probably there were some people, I have no idea, at the concert using MDMA and stuff like that. That is associated with this kind of music and the kind of concerts, this kind of nightlife. And all of those people, especially, aside from everyone else standing out in the sun for that all day, needs water.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do to make the water? Well, it took me a while to find the water.
Same. We were in the middle of the amphitheater, like kind of center, both directions. And so I went off to the side, and I saw some people going down the steps, some people going up the steps, and no signs for water or bathrooms. And I was looking for both. So I decided to hike it all the way back up to the top of the amphitheater, and then it was still unclear. There was a main building. I went down into this, it looked almost like a museum type thing, or I don't know. It was weird. So I went down, and there I found the bathroom, and I didn't even see a drinking fountain. Maybe I wasn't looking hard enough, but definitely shouldn't have been quite so hard to find water. I heard afterwards that you had headed down the steps, drinking the opposite direction, and you found water down there.
Yes, but barely. I mean, I was looking all over for it too, and there's plenty of people with water bottles looking just as confused.
Yeah, you can come in with an empty, not like reusable water bottle. You can't come in with a full water bottle because they check that. You have to empty it out. So you would think that right as you enter, you should have a space to fill your water bottles because they have to be empty before entering. So they didn't have that at all either.
And the fact that they allow that policy, they have that policy, acknowledges people are going to be looking for water when they come in here. They're not just going to be bringing in water bottles like just to hold on to all night. They need water. That's why they brought the bottles. So you make them dump them out, and you walk in, and then you're looking for water. And there was not a sign for any water in
or
the
bathrooms.
whole place. Yeah. When I went down the stairs looking, wandering, I found other people with empty water bottles, and we were sadly wandering around together trying to find water. There's this convenience store kind of shop kiosk where you can buy like hot dogs and stuff, and water was many dollars. I actually didn't look, so I can't say, but I'm pretty sure somebody said water's $8 over there, and you look and there's no line, and there's 4 staff members at the cash registers like waiting to give you a bottle of water for $8. Meanwhile, near this place, next to this, is a big long line of people, and I was like, oh, what's this? Like, this is probably water, and it's like gonna take half an hour to get my one bottle filled up. And that's what it was. And there was no sign. Actually, there was a big sign that said no smoking right above the water fountain. That was like what everybody was standing in front of. I'm like, oh, we're all waiting not to smoke here? Like, no, this is the water line. I'm like, oh, wow. Great. And, I actually appreciated the water line. I felt bad because I had to leave the group many times to go get us water. But it was fun making friends with everyone in line and gossiping about how ridiculous it was that there's 9,000 people here, and this is the line we're in.
They have 2 drinking fountains.
2 really pitiful drinking fountains that have almost no pressure, and it took 5 minutes just for me to fill up my one bottle, and there's a huge line of people, and some people had no bottle. They were just so thirsty, they'd wait half an hour to get like
a sip.
A 30-second sip of water. Yeah. That seemed outrageous, right?
Especially for such a long concert. It was so much fun, but even a human just sitting for 7 hours needs water, let alone dancing, consuming different substances. It seemed absurd that the access was so limited.
It's such a great venue, too.
Yeah, it's a freaking awesome venue. It was really cool. Really, really cool venue. And it's a destination for so many people. So, yeah.
Yeah,
you'd think they'd have that together.
Exactly. Everyone knows about Red Rocks. Everybody wants to go to Red Rocks. This was my first time at Red Rocks.
Same here.
And it was wonderful. I loved it. Except, I was astonished, really, that was the water situation. Imagine how many artists have gone through there, how many people have gone through there. Professionals in this world, in the nightlife, harm reduction world, have been through there attending or working at such events. And none of them, up until this day, were able to get any better water situation at Red Rocks. I mean, I don't know. I was going to say, like, who's in charge over there? Like, what are they doing? But really, like, that just seems like an obvious, big problem.
And it seems like there's so many easy solutions. Just like putting up signs to show where water is, putting in more drinking fountains. Even they had people walking through the crowds with like fun glasses or light up things that you could buy. And so they were walking back and forth. You'd see people who worked there. And instead of maybe having these items, or in addition to having these items, they could have a water bottle for $1 or $2 or nothing, because everyone's paid a significant amount to get into this place. And, even the artists are getting, I don't know, they could have a few cents to get water to their people, maybe granola bars, earplugs. There's so many things that you could do to make this a safer space. We saw at the end of the show an ambulance leaving. Don't know what the situation was, but I mean, and any of these negative situations could be avoided by, trying a little bit harder to have a concern for the audience members.
Yeah, and there's lots of people just in that moment who could have done something more. I mean, any one of us could have brought a couple sheets of paper and a Sharpie and said water,
that
arrow,
way.
to go down the stairs, not up,
Yeah.
That'd be an easy one. I mean, how many people have had that idea and never done it? I don't know. That's kind of strange. But yeah, then take the artists themselves, for example. Like, no, like one of them could have said where the water was. I mean, anybody who has, okay, the managers of the building should have come on the PA at the very beginning and been like, yo, there's water, here's where it is. We all know you need water, and actually reminded people, you need water. That's a great idea. Very easy thing to do. Plenty of people were on the microphone, had everybody's attention that night, and not one of them mentioned it like it wasn't important. Like, I wonder why that is. I don't think any artist had any malintents, or anybody was like trying or like thinking of themselves as being especially lazy by not reminding people or helping people.
It's just not the norm. It's not the expectation. It's maybe they think they have a certain type of show that they should give, and maybe that's not a part of what that show would look like. I don't know.
And I wonder how that gets into the artists' minds exactly. And it's not just this type of music. It's almost every show I've ever been to. The person who has everyone's attention usually doesn't say something helpful. I mean, how often do you have 9,000 people staring at you, listening to your every word? Like, this is a good opportunity, and you don't want to waste that opportunity. You want to say something that people need to hear. And say something
like drink water.
Sincere, yeah, especially that. Because, I mean, you're going to enjoy my show better if you are all hydrated and healthy and happy. So why wouldn't I want you to all be that and tell you that? I'm not sure.
Have you ever walked out of a venue and been completely satisfied with the harm reduction measures that venue took?
Completely satisfied.
Yeah, there was plenty of water, there was plenty of bathrooms, there was ear protection provided, or like things weren't too expensive, people could get their needs satisfied, or there was help available, and all of these different things covered.
I can definitely say I have never been to a venue where I have been completely satisfied. No way. And I don't know. I don't think my standards are that high. I mean, maybe they're higher than the average Joe who just doesn't necessarily think of these things or whatever. But, I'm not asking for unreasonable.
I need a place to pee, place to get water.
Food available.
Yeah, food available, and I need to know how to get help if I need help.
Yeah, there need to be people constantly around to help. No, I don't think so. But what I have seen at certain conferences. Take, for instance, the Students for Sensible Drug Policy Conference that you and I attended with Cal. This was a wonderful example. So I think we might have told this story before, but there's at the conference there was a night where they had a band, and it's the end of the day of conferencing, and we're all gonna party together and dance and sing harm reduction music. And what was very obvious right away when the band started playing was that it was super loud in that room. And it wasn't so much their equipment, it was just the fact that we were in a marble room and there's like a trap set just banging away, and it's so loud in there, astonishingly loud. And so at first I'm disappointed because there's no earplugs. And this is the place where there should be the most harm reduction going on. So right away I was concerned. But then Dance Safe actually was there at the conference. They had representatives there. They had a booth there. They had a bunch of earplugs. So once it became obvious that, oh, this is harmful, way too loud, they went up to their hotel room and grabbed the earplugs and brought them down and started giving them out to people. So, and that was excellent. Everybody needed them. Everybody got them. It was great. And there was water fountains in that room. Mm-hmm. It was good. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I wasn't completely satisfied with the preparation and they weren't necessarily ready for that, though probably they should have been. However, there were certain individuals there who did take initiative, mm-hmm. and I'm completely satisfied with those individuals, and it's very obvious that they tried. And that is something that is important. Like, if the people come into your event who are paying a lot to be there, it doesn't even seem like you're trying to make them safe or help. Mm-hmm. That is offensive to me a bit, especially for such a venue like Red Rocks.
Yeah.
Who's had plenty of experience with mm-hmm. this. So, but not to say, like, I asked certain people who were working there, where's the water? And they understood. Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's no sign for the water. You have to wait over here, you know? It's like people knew about it who worked there, and they knew what the problem was, and they knew how to help, and they were happy to help. But it's like, why should they be in that situation?
Do we know how long Red Rocks has been a venue?
I do not.
I'm going to look that up.
Okay. How many thirsty people have gone through there? Could you calculate the number of show hours and calculate the number of water that all of the attendees should have had in that time?
The number of water. Yeah. The amount of water that they should have consumed. Should have been available to them.
Yeah, and I bet how much water has actually come out of those drinking fountains that people consumed. Probably much, 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 much less.
Holy shoot. It's been open since 1906.
What? Wow.
1906? And they don't have enough drinking fountains? Are you kidding me?
100 years.
Holy cow.
Of shows. And still no drinking fountains.
Over 100 years of shows. That's
this is a big
unreal.
deal. We shouldn't let this go on. I mean, it's a simple thing, but it's serious. It's very important. And I mean, who's setting the example then? If you go to a Red Rocks show, this is supposed to be like the pinnacle of shows. Best venue. You should assume the best staff, the best situation to make their people
best
consistently
artists, like
happy.
everything. Yeah.
The artists who come should have a lot of experience doing shows like this. They understand people need water. And yet, almost all of these groups let me down personally. The venue, most of all. 110 years of shows.
And they have 2 drinking fountains?
Oh my God.
And no signage.
No sign. A no smoking sign. I wonder how long that's been there.
Yeah, right?
Probably not very long, actually. They probably just put the sign up like 30 years ago.
Not very long. Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible experience, and the venue really, truly is amazing. It was an honor and a privilege to be there.
The parking was good, even though there wasn't like a big lot.
Yeah, there were a couple lots. The parking was pretty good. It seemed like everyone kind of got out pretty safely and easily. So that was great. The flow of people, that was really good. But I think the biggest thing for me was, water and bathrooms. Should be given, but it wasn't.
As far as other security harm reduction things going on, I'm not sure the best policy on like frisking people or like checking people's purses and stuff going into a big event. Part of me doesn't like that at all. Part of me thinks, well, it's good to know that no one's bringing a gun in here or something. At times, I'm uncertain about like what's best there, but
it didn't seem too dramatic when we walked in.
There was no security.
Yeah, they peeked in your bags, got your ticket, and like it was pretty low key.
So I appreciate not being frisked, I maybe also would have appreciated a little more. I'm not sure. But they're checking for that. They looked in your purse. And they made you dump out your water bottle. But they didn't necessarily do anything else for us. I wonder how that is. How that has been their policy, how they decide these things. One thing that helps venue owners decide such things, something we've talked about a lot before, the Rave Act, which, as you know, back in 2001 or 2003, whenever, was it was renamed and called the Illicit Drug Proliferation Act, which we all call the Rave Act, which was implemented back then to crack down on wild parties that were happening. Basically, if you are hosting a party where there's a lot of harm going on, you as the venue owner are going to be responsible for that harm. And the government or people could sue you for having a harmful environment, right? Seems like a good thing because this is going to mean that venue owners are taking responsibility and doing all they can to minimize all the harm they can because they're taking on that liability. But weirdly, it's become the opposite. Like the effect it's had is weirdly been the opposite. Many musical festival organizers say that the Rave Act prevents them from doing a lot of harm reduction.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, because if they are trying to reduce harm, it can be seen by the government who's made all these substances totally illegal and horrible as if you even mention illegal drugs, then you're increasing the harm.
Oh, but, by allowing them
right.
or encouraging or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have a completely blanket no drugs in here policy, then you could be seen as violating the Rave Act and you could be in big trouble just for making, say, substance testing available at your show.
Jeez.
And a lot of organizers have said they're afraid to hand out free water. Well, certain festivals made cool down areas where they provide water and mist you, and it's like obvious that especially the people who are on MDMA and alcohol need water and a cool down area. These cool down areas have been accused of promoting drug use, which is totally absurd. So the act, which was meant to make festival and venue owners more responsible, has tied their hands in such a weird way that they are afraid to even hand out water. I am astonished to think that they are afraid to even install more water fountains. Like, that just seems weird to me. But
yeah,
that seems way too far and like not necessarily an effect of the act. But there are laws like that have not worked at all, that are supposed to make us safer.
So this morning I saw a video about the Marijuana Justice Act. The video was produced by DPA, the Drug Policy Alliance. Maybe start over.
Okay.
I forgot what it was called.
It's okay.
Drug Policy Alliance. Okay. It's talking about this act that was introduced to the Senate by Cory Booker of New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker, last August, actually on my birthday last August. In January, it was introduced to the House, and at this point, it has just been introduced and referred to a committee, but it has not been voted on. But it's a pretty incredible act. It's perhaps the most revolutionary act regarding marijuana that's been introduced.
I have never heard of it until this morning, which is weird because it's been out for a year and a half or a little over a year.
Yeah, a little over a year.
I hadn't heard of it. But yeah, we were just reading some of the main points, and I think it'd be a fun exercise on the Harm Reduction Report here today, right now, to talk about this act and decide what the points mean and what they're really trying to get at. Are these all really good points? And I'm curious myself.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking on the Congress.gov page, and so I'm looking at the text that they have explaining what this act is about. So it intends to do a number of things. Firstly, removing marijuana from the Schedule 1, removing it from Schedule 1, and to eliminate criminal penalties for people who have used or sold marijuana. Basically, people who are in jail for using or possessing or selling weed. It will also reduce funding in states that have a disproportionate number of people being incarcerated for weed possession and weed-related offenses. So basically, if a state is throwing more people in jail for weed-related things, they will have less funding for their law enforcement and for prison construction. Those are the areas that they will reduce their funding. Mm-hmm. So it's also kind of encourages states to not only legalize marijuana, but also to expunge these offenses that they're putting people in jail for.
So the first main point of this act is amending the Controlled Substances Act.
Yes.
Which is the thing that creates the schedules that we talk about. All substances that are illegal are on some schedule of the Controlled Substances Act. So the first thing this does is removes marijuana from its currently scheduled status as Schedule 1, which, as you know, is supposed to designate a substance that has absolutely no medical benefits in any situation, mm-hmm. has highly destructive and addictive properties, and is generally just straight up bad.
LOL.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting because the other things on Schedule 1 include things like heroin.
And I think I recall looking on that. I need to double check, but I think I saw that amphetamines and methamphetamines are Schedule 2, which is a lower schedule than Schedule 1, where weed is placed. Which it just seems honestly like lying, it seems dishonest to put weed in that position when it is just like scientifically incorrect. False.
Very, very false. I mean, there's obviously medical benefits that marijuana has for many people mm-hmm. all throughout time in the world. So how it is on Schedule 1 still is absolutely a political matter and not at all a scientific one. Mm-mm. Which is a bummer. So it makes sense to remove it from Schedule 1. I would actually, probably all the schedules need to be rethought of.
Yeah.
Maybe a scheduling system where drugs are simply ranked and put like this is not the best way about it.
Yeah, certainly not.
There are countries that have gotten rid of their schedule systems entirely, like Portugal, who has decriminalized all drugs, all substances, and it's worked out very, very well for them.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that the bill does is it expunges all federal convictions for possessing or using weed. So that is getting thousands of people out of jail who are only in there because of something related to weed. Though they can't, on a state level, they can't tell states to expunge any convictions at a state level. They are going to take away funding from states that have a disproportionate number of people in jail for using or possessing weed.
I wonder what that means exactly, funding. How much funding? It says federal funding to law enforcement and mm-hmm. prison construction will be reduced. It doesn't say necessarily how much, there.
It doesn't say how much.
Or where that money's coming from in the first place. Or that's an interesting one. Let's say that this passes, that point is in there, and now, say, North Dakota... North Dakota's probably going to legalize this. Let's take another example state.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Oh, Minnesota. You're going to be so sad and foolish when North Dakota legalizes it before you. Sorry. Let's say that... I'm not sure what this federal funding looks like exactly, but... if this thing passes, Minnesota still refuses to legalize it. Their funding is reduced. Do you think they're just going to move the funding around?
Well, okay. Another part of this bill is that it would put $500 million towards a community reinvestment fund. And that goes towards job training in communities, particularly communities of color, black communities, and poor communities that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. So that's potentially where if that money is taken away from these states for, basically funding, putting people in jail for weed, it will be, maybe that money will be put towards this community reinvestment fund.
And that kind of investment is not a handout. it's not just money going to people who we just let out of jails to do whatever they want with. This is like investing in things that will get them employment and things that will allow them to have a healthy family and to bring themselves up from where they're at. Yeah, well, okay, the expungement point is really, really good one. And it's one that we don't talk about as much. Like, we're all interested in legalizing this now. And most people are like, yeah, obviously, let's just get to it. But we don't talk about expungements. This is the people who are already in jail for this. Yeah. And it's extremely weird in a state like Colorado, where it is not illegal to sell, when you do it legally, marijuana in this state. However, there are people in jail for the exact same offense right now. So many people, and yes, disproportionately minorities and people of color, are in jail for selling weed in Colorado right now, maybe in federal prisons. But also, there are plenty of people, most of them rich white dudes, who are making millions and millions of dollars selling marijuana to the same people in the same state.
It's ridiculous.
So that obviously sounds wrong, and it's simply legalizing it now is not enough. Not even close to enough. And honestly, it should really inspire people to vote to legalize it in their state just for that reason. Think not at all about like who's going to be smoking now that it's legal. Think just about whose lives are currently ruined because of silly laws. And how many of these people could be back on their feet, supporting our community, paying taxes, voting for good things, if we were to let them out.
And it's a really important, like, not just to wait it out and, like, let them wait their time out in jail. Not only because that's just wrong, but because when they leave jail, they still have this criminal record just because of using and possessing weed that will inhibit them from employment, inhibit them from getting back on their feet. So the expungement is also important, not only to get them out of jail, but to get them out of jail in a place that they can actually get a job and get going again.
One thing, and maybe this is like a whole different topic, but people who have these big federal things on their record, when they come out of jail, they're not even allowed to vote.
It's ridiculous.
They're not allowed to vote. So, like, just think about that. Like, if you're not allowed to vote, I feel like your concept of citizenship is extremely different. It's changed. It's like you're not a full citizen at all. In my opinion, if you're not even allowed to vote, you're not a citizen. And so, I don't know, there's a conversation about it. It's a good debate, perhaps. Should murderers and rapists and whatever, the worsts of our crimes, should they not ever be able to vote once they've served their time? That's a very debatable point. But what about the point of like someone whose crime was simply marijuana possession or selling a little bit of marijuana, and now they can never vote?
This seems unconstitutional, honestly.
Yeah, totally wrong. And obviously that's just going to keep certain things happening that we don't want to have happen. So we have to expunge the records. We have to let people prove themselves, and it's not just giving them an unfair advantage. All the upstart people who have never been convicted of a federal crime, good for them. They can still vote.
No, right now we're giving them an unfair disadvantage, and it's just removing that disadvantage as much as we can.
Yeah. And that's what we need to do, remove the barriers for people to get the help they need. And that's the theme that goes into
harm reduction.
A lot of it, yeah. Simply preventing drug use in the first place is removing barriers for them to become full, healthy, productive citizens. And when you want to prevent drug use in the first place, one thing to do is remove barriers for people that between them and treatment. So often, what we do by imprisoning people and limiting their opportunities after their first offense is putting barriers in the way that will make it obviously impossible for them to get healthy and to find a good job and to change their lives.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, it makes sense to me. We give them a shot. As far as that third point goes, was it third or fourth point? The one about the money.
The reinvestment?
Yeah, the reinvestment.
That's really cool.
Okay, in Colorado, the marijuana taxes that we talked about on the show a couple weeks ago have funded, directly marijuana taxes have funded similar reinvestment programs for preventing more drug use and drug abuse in kids, all the way up through promoting construction and job opportunities and stuff. And it's worked here very well for them. So this is not exactly different. This is not proposing federal taxes on marijuana will be used.
It didn't mention that.
Right.
I haven't. I'll have to read the whole bill to see if that's mentioned.
Right.
It's not mentioned in the summary that's on the Congress.gov.
The summary we have says some money will be reduced to law enforcement in states that are wasting their time putting people in jail for weed, and some money. Well, there was a specific number there, $500 million, goes to specifically creating job opportunities and the providing the infrastructure for all these people when we do let them out. And this is really a when we let them out. Like, if we never let them out, where are we going here? Like, especially while states are legalizing it, very silly.
Especially in states where it's legal.
Yeah.
So that would be another interesting thing to look at. Is there any movement in the state legislature of Colorado to expunge these convictions?
That's a good one, and I don't know.
Because there should be.
Right now, even if you have served your time in Colorado for marijuana offense, and you are free, probably you're not able to vote. I'm not sure about that in this state. But you are not allowed to open a legal dispensary if you've had a criminal charge on your record for marijuana.
And you still have that criminal charge, because it's still present. Even if they're out of jail, it still says that they were in jail for this.
So as a resident of Colorado, as an entrepreneur, as a family businessman, someone could say, try to get into this business, but you could not do it if you still have that on your record. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be expunged, because someone who's served their time completely, I mean, even them, like, are we not allowing them the chance to move on?
To have a legal way to make money?
To go through it legally and verify all your stuff, and it just makes total sense. Like, let's let these people redeem. Like, let's let redemption happen here. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to happen if we're still holding on to people in jail for things that are legal now. Mm-hmm. So I'm really glad that this Marijuana Justice Act, obviously, everybody knows it needs to be rescheduled, or the schedule system itself needs to completely change. But the expungement thing is a big, big point. And consider that, North Dakotans, when you go to the polls this November to vote on recreational marijuana. I'm pretty sure in that vote, our state vote, it says nothing of expungements. I'm not sure. We should look into that. Mm-hmm. But no one's certainly talked about it anyway. I'm assuming there is no expungement point in that bill. So when we're voting on it, I don't even know if we're voting on that, but it should be in there. And especially if it isn't, we should vote to legalize it, because it's going to take a long time to get that expungement process happening.
I really like how this bill takes this the full way, every step of the way. It talks about changing the schedule of marijuana, but it also talks about releasing people and expunging these convictions, and then helping rehabilitate these communities that have been so damaged by the war on drugs. It goes the full way, and I think tries to combat the damages of the war on drugs, not just to combat future damages. It also confronts things that have already happened.
Can we try to poke some holes into this, or expose the potentially flawed aspects of this? Does anything stick out to you right away? I'm definitely curious more about that funding to law enforcement point, how that works. I think
perhaps before we go on the show next week, we'll read the whole text and see if we find any loopholes or find any issues with it, and we can talk about that next week.
Great idea. And we should talk about the North Dakota
we should look at that bill, and then we should also look at Colorado, see if there's any movement to try to get people out of jail for weed, who are in jail for weed convictions.
It almost sounds to me like I could think of people in a state who says, oh, this federal law is going to tell the state what to do. They're going to cut our state funding for our law enforcement. That almost seems like a point that could be used against the goodness of this idea. Some people could say that the federal government is stepping too far by saying such a thing. Like, they're punishing the states who themselves choose to keep it illegal. I wonder if that's a good communication strategy. I think it's a good idea. I think the results would be good.
But it's interesting, because another thing we learned recently, those people who might criticize this bill, perhaps they just want to find a way to criticize the bill, and that's one of the ways they're like, this is impinging on state power. Would those same people have an issue with the federal government taking funding away from states for legalizing marijuana? You know, maybe someone who is against the legalization of marijuana would support that infringement of the federal government on the state government, but not this one. And maybe, I don't know, that's a parallel that would be interesting.
That is a very interesting point, at. Yeah, because I could see somebody who says, I don't want the federal government telling my state whether to legalize it or not, looking over at their neighboring state who is being punished, a neighboring state who has decided to legalize it, who is still being punished. Like, for example, Colorado, they're in violation of federal law, big time. Like, they're a state, so they're allowed to do it what they want in that sense. But this is a very funny situation to me. I am still kind of amazed that it happens. Imagine what the Coloradoans would do, say very conservative Coloradoans would do, if the federal government came in and tried to control whether or not they do this or how they do this. I could see a very strong reaction. And actually, DJ Tea Time, who we had on the show last week, said exactly that same thing. I forget the name of the Republican congressperson, who he said is very strongly conservative in Colorado, who also came out against the current executive federal administration, who was threatening to come into Colorado and influence their legal markets here. Even the most conservative one among them, I'm not sure his particular opinion on marijuana legalization, actually, but despite their opinion, they said, do not do that. The federal government, do not come into Colorado and tell us how to do this, because that's not cool, and we are handling ourselves just fine. Thank you very much. I really respect a person like that. But depending on the thing, there could be a ton of harm going on. And maybe the federal government needs to come in and assist. Like, someone's got to do it. The government, that's what they're for. Like, they should be doing a good job, whether you're the state government or the federal government. Obviously, that's what everybody wants. Very funny dynamic, and I think it's a very funny situation.
But I think it's a dynamic that goes on in a lot of different areas where, like, a conservative politician who may say they're against government involvement is also pro people like controlling the distribution of birth control, the availability of abortions, of drugs, of these things. That these are all government involvement that they say that they're against, but they're for it if it supports their policies.
Right.
So it's just an interesting thing that happens.
And I obviously believe that millions of people in jail for something that is not harmful to society and actually is good for society, research says, in jail is just as serious as all those other things we're talking about. Like, and there should be no barriers to some of that harm reduction.
Mm-hmm. The video itself was quite good. I thought it was put together well. It had a good tone, and they interviewed Senator Booker himself, and I think they really made a point of covering each aspect of the bill, and also making it clear that, like, the war on drugs is something that has disproportionately affected communities of color, and they did a good job of covering each aspect of the situation.
Yeah, that's good. The Drug Policy Alliance, they're a big nonprofit organization that does a lot of fundraising and activism and communication campaigns to bring awareness and policy change about all this stuff on a federal level and in states. So my impression is they're a very good group. But one thing that's really interesting is the email that I got this morning that contained that video. So we watched the video. I think we agreed it had a really wonderful tone itself. But the email that the video came in had a different tone. The email is directly written for people who have signed up on their mailing listserv, which contain people like me who are just merely interested and want to stay up to date and know that they are a relatively sincere source of information on what's going on. That's why I'm on the listserv. But also, it's clearly like they're trying to get donations from these emails and from their fan base. They're following. So the tone of the email itself was a lot more political than the video. The video is sincere. It's like, this is a bill that's being proposed.
Mm-hmm. This is happening. This is what it's going to do. Yeah. And this, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But the email was like, if you don't buy into this, then you're bad. You're evil. You're wrong. and we're out to get you, almost. Like, there's very combative language in these emails. And this is absolutely not something that is unique to one side of the political debate. There are plenty of listservs I could get on with a lot also politically charged messaging on the other side of this thing. And my opinion is the groups on either side of that who are using combative language deliberately to create this this impression that it is a battle, that we should fight, and that one side should win. I don't think that's the right way to go. It seems to clearly divide people further, unfortunately. And somebody who read that email would not watch the video if they were, turned off by the language in the email.
I think that's a good point.
So how do we support groups that have a good tone? How do we encourage a good tone? Say the followers of DPA, I think they should go to their group and tell them what they think. Like, hey, I completely support what you're doing, 100%, but I think the tone is harsh.
I mean, that's an email you could send, we could send.
Yeah.
And we haven't sent it.
Yeah, right.
So maybe people need to do things like that. Actually give feedback. Or these organizations send out a survey, like, how do you think our communication methods are doing? But that's a good idea. Maybe we should just send them an email and be like, hey, like, this stuff rocks, this video rocks, like, we totally support this, but maybe we should, could consider different approaches.
It'd be wonderful if one of them would want to interview with us and be real candid with us and try to tell us what they're attempting to do with their communication.
And maybe they found that this language maybe doesn't work for you. Maybe it works for other people. I don't know. So it would be an interesting conversation to have.
Right. I would assume they're not trying to divide people, right? I mean, they want to... It goes back to the old, like, missionary ideas of, like, converting your enemy. But Alan Watts explains, like, there is such a thing as a beloved enemy. And you're supposed to love your enemy not to convert them and make them become you, but love them because they are not you. And that's what makes you you. And if we, that shouldn't mean that we have to keep the division forever. I mean, we need a beloved enemy. We always need an enemy. I don't think that's where Alan Watts is going with that point. But if we truly showed compassion to people who we think are opposed to us, it seems like the fastest way to coming to a consensus better, a compromise, finding the truest answer. We can't all be right. And so shouldn't we acknowledge that? And yet some of these emails, whether it's on the left or the right, they say, we are right. They are wrong. Let's bring them down. That seems hard to me. I definitely hesitate to have that tone on this show.
Well, I guess it'd be interesting to look at other places that the DPA interacts with people, different people. So maybe is their tone on these emails the same as the tone on their website or their tone when they're communicating with other people? So maybe it's a specific tone for this email to try to, they're trying to get donations. They're trying to get people excited about, being in part of this big movement. So it'd be interesting to compare how they communicate in other sources, because a more public place that they're talking, like, it seems perhaps even more necessary to have this a more sincere and level and compassionate tone. Yeah.
Right.
So we could look at that.
We totally could, and compare other groups. Actually, this sounds like a wonderful master's project in the communication research department I'm in.
Yeah, it would. It would be wonderful.
Totally. Let's empirically compare the tone that people have about drug policies. And you look at the most extreme groups on either side, try to make a consensus of most of the groups in the middle, and figure out what works and why groups are using the tones they're using.
Well, it's not just drug policy, too. I mean, I've been on email lists for other, like, political things or, like, different people who are running for campaigns. Like, you want to support them one time, you get on an email list, and you get a lot of these emails that are like, hoorah, this is the cause, we're doing this right now, we have to act, and
donate.
Yeah, donate and whatever. And it seems kind of a common theme for those emails. So perhaps your a master's thesis could look at various types of political or politicized issues and emails, and comparing these different tones and their effectiveness.
It'd be very interesting. And all these groups hire professionals to do this communication work for them, which is a good thing, because it means that these groups aren't just wasting their money, and governments and anybody who has an advertisement or is trying to sell or a service or anything at all, promote an idea, it's good that they are thinking about their impacts and that they're using peer-reviewed academic research to fuel their decisions and how they make communication choices. It's good that they hire professionals, and it's good that they do their research. So I wonder what these people say. Yeah, like, have the communication staff at DPA looked at academic research that shows, certain political messages in certain contexts are better or worse for their own cause? I wonder.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Have any of these people, clearly they do, they have if you ask any strategic communication person for a group of any kind, if they're a good one, they have at least thought about what they're trying to do, whether they're pointing back to research that says this should work or not. They have intuition or something, their
or
own experience
at
least, that says, I think this will work.
Yeah, I wonder if all these different sources kind of come to the same hoorah tone. Do they come to this because they found it's most effective? I don't know.
My question would be, if everyone's talking that way now, how is the whole communication ecosystem doing? And maybe it's good for you as an individual group to have a certain tone, but now that all the groups are talking like that, does it make it harder? Does it still work as well?
Well, it makes me honestly kind of want to get off some of these listservs.
Me too.
Because it's just over and over and over again. Each one is I don't know, having the same tone and the same. Sometimes it gets annoying, like you try to get involved as much as you can. Maybe you donate when you can, but the constant barrage of it maybe is a little much. Especially
around Christmas time and tax time,
and election time, and
they're looking for donations, and you get just an increase of those emails, and it's too bad because
I want to stay involved, and I want to stay updated, and I want to be aware of these issues that I care about. But when it's framed like this, sometimes it gets a little more frustrating to be on these finding out your information this way.
Yes, Mora, I'm very happy and grateful, and thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will be back for more next week. Remember, Sandbagger News YouTube channel has actually, I'm still working on the backlog of episodes. All of our episodes up on the Sandbagger News YouTube channel. We post them all on the UND Psychedelic Club Facebook page, and of course you can listen online at keqqradio.com, 88.3 FM in good old G-Funk, North Dakota. This is the Harm Reduction Report. We're in Colorado. We miss you. Thanks. Sandbag on.